This is why you should never spread rumors. Once there was a girl called Grace who always wore a hat to school. Even in the summer, she always had a knitted black beanie pulled down to her eyes. Soon, the rumors started around school. Some people said she must have bald patches or have another medical condition that the students didn't know about. Either way, she was constantly bullied for always wearing that hat. One day, Grace's class had a new teacher whose eyes immediately fell on Grace. She said, "No hats in class." Grace's eyes widened and she went pale. "Well, what are you waiting for? Take it off." Grace replied, "I can't." The teacher grew angry, reached over, grabbed the hat, and yanked it off of Grace's head. The room fell silent. Then screams, vomit, terror, and chaos. The back of Grace's head was blown open. Bits of skull caved into her head. A small matching hole sat on her forehead near her hairline. Grace then stood up and ran out of the room, sobbing. That was the last anyone has ever seen of Grace. A couple years passed and people stopped talking about it as much until a new kid joined their class. A kid who always wears a scarf.
In 6th grade, I went to go visit my little cousins at their house. Their house was right on the edge of these woods. And the woods were really thick, and our parents always told us not to go there. And one time I asked my mom why, and she said because when people do bad things, they sometimes go and hide in the woods. I was staying at my cousin's house for a week on this one trip, and whenever I was bored, I would go look out the window and watch the woods. Usually it was pretty boring, and I would just be staring at trees. But one day it was like 5 p.m. and the sun was setting, so it was getting dark, and I saw something moving in the woods. I told my uncle, and he said it was probably just an animal. And I told him no, it was tall and looked like a skinny lady. And he said I have a creative imagination and it was probably just a deer. But then a few minutes later, I heard my aunt and uncle whispering in the kitchen. My aunt was talking about a woman from the psychiatric hospital in their town who had escaped. Their house was like 15 minutes away from a maximum security psychiatric hospital for criminals with mental illness. And then they saw me listening to them in the doorway and they stopped talking completely. A few days later, in the middle of the night, I heard a noise downstairs.
Story time! Okay, so really random story, but I was reading a story that someone submitted and like they were talking about how her and her cousin were drowning, and it reminded me of something that happened when I was a kid. So when I was a kid, I used to live in a state that was hot as fuck. And what do you do when it's hot? You want to cool down. So like we would always go to the pool. And I remember this one day my family was like, let's go to the pool, and I had this cousin who I was always with. We were both the same age. I think at the time we were like 5 years old. So I remember we like walked over to the pool. We were chilling there, jumping into the pool. We had no floaties, by the way. And my dad used to do this thing where he would chill in the pool and I would jump and he would catch me so I wouldn't drown. And I remember that's what we were doing. I jumped into the pool, he caught me, and then I get out and I'm ready to jump again. But then my cousin is standing in front of me. My dad is in the pool waiting for her to jump so he can catch her, but she's scared. She doesn't want to do it. And I just remember that I was like, damn, she's taking forever. And my brain was just like, push her. So that's what I did. And when I pushed her, she just like fell in and started drowning. And I just remember seeing her like float to the bottom. And my dad was like, Stephanie, what the fuck? Like, you can't do that. So he like starts swimming to her and I just see her like pick her up and he's dragging her from the bottom of the pool. If you guys were to see the way like she was just floating down, like she just gave up. Honestly, that's what it was like. He took her out of the pool though and she lived. She was obviously crying and I felt like shit. I didn't want to jump anymore after that. I was like, damn, I just almost killed my cousin. Story time! So on June 15th, 2020, I was at my grandma's house, and while I was there, she ended up telling me a story. She told me about how when she used to live at her old house and that there was a lot of people going missing and getting killed in her neighborhood. I'm pretty sure she said the person responsible for all these people going missing and killed was the Night Stalker. So anyways, she said that she remembered that one night she had her windows open near the front door, so she got up and locked it before she went to bed. Later that night, she wasn't able to sleep for quite a long time, so she got up and she went to the kitchen and made herself a quick cup of tea. After her cup of tea, she went outside to go smoke a cigarette. While she was smoking her cigarette, she walked near the window that she had just closed a couple of hours ago. When she looked down, she saw 2 large footprints and handprints with gloves on her window. She then quickly called the police and locked all the doors and windows in her house. The police then told her to stay inside and that they would be there soon. When they got there, somehow the footprints were gone, but the glove marks were still there, meaning someone was trying to break in. Till this day, my grandma still doesn't know who the person was, but there's a big chance that it could have been the Night Stalker and she could have been one of his next victims.
So this one time I had to stay at my grandma's because my dad was on vacation. And I was having a huge box of clothes come in and I was not about to have these hoes stolen, so I had my friend stop by to put them inside. So I called my friend up and I was like, hey, can you tell me when you get to my house and let me know when you put the package in? She's like, I got you, shawty. I was like, bet, girl. So around 10 minutes later, I got a call from her freaking out. She was like, Kayla, is there anybody at your house? I was like, no, my dad's on vacation and I'm at my grandma's. She said, no, Kayla, there is somebody at your house right now. So I start freaking out. I'm like, girl, what do you mean? And she said she saw someone walk across this huge window and then my dad's lights turned on. So I start freaking out. I'm like, what did you see walk across the window? Like, who did it look like? and she said it was just a black, tall figure that walked across that window. And around 5 minutes of being on the phone, freaking out, she said my dad's lights turned off again. Eventually, me and my grandma drove by the house to make sure nobody was there, and of course, nobody was in my house. And it only gets worse.
If you've ever thought about getting your ears pierced, don't do what she did. This is the urban legend about a girl in Japan who tried to do it, then ended up with horrifying consequences. So this young girl really wanted to get her ears pierced. After some pleading with her parents, they finally agreed and gave her some money to go do it. But instead, the girl kept the money and decided to pierce them herself and let her friend help her. They heated up a large needle and went for it one day. It was painful, but in the end, she was happy she could finally wear earrings. However, this wouldn't last long. One day in school, she felt an intense pain in her left ear. Her earlobe was itchy, and by the end of the day, she had a headache. She went into the bathroom and saw her ear was very inflamed. Then she looked closer and saw a piece of white string sticking out of her new piercing. She picked and pulled at it, which only made the string longer. Now it was hanging out of her earlobe. The string seemed to be endless. The more she pulled, the longer it got. Finally, fed up, she took a pair of scissors and cut the string. Suddenly, everything went black. There was a burning pain in her ears and her eyes. She began to scream. In the hospital, it was revealed that it wasn't a piece of string at all. She had pulled out a piece of her optic nerve and cut it. She would be blind for the rest of her life.
Story time! Okay, so this one night around 1 in the morning, I went to go take a shower. After I take my shower, I get out and I usually always bring my phone with me, and I see that my brother messages me. He messaged me saying, "Hey, are you okay? I hear someone crying. Why are you crying?" And in my head, I'm like, well, I wasn't crying, so who's crying? I get out the shower and I go to his room and his door is wide open. I go and I ask him what happened, and he said, I had my door open and all of a sudden I just hear a woman start crying. I thought it was you because you're the only one that's awake. It sounded really bad, that's why I messaged you. So I told him, no, that wasn't crying at all. I was like, maybe you're just hearing things. I then asked him why he had his door open, because obviously everyone's asleep and it's really dark in the hallway, so something creepy is bound to happen. After that, we just got over it and we went to bed. About 2 days later, it's the same scenario. I go to take a shower at 1 or 2 in the morning and everyone's asleep. After my shower, that's when I step out in the hallway, but for some reason I didn't turn on the lights this time. All of a sudden, I start hearing a woman crying. But then I hear my brother talking to someone on the phone, so I was like, oh, maybe it's one of his friends. I get closer to his door and the cry gets louder. That's when I realized that it's probably coming from the closet right next to his door. I opened his door right away, hoping that whoever he was talking to was crying, but it wasn't. I told him what happened and we still haven't found out what it was to this day.
Girls, tell me about a time where your quick thinking probably saved your life. I'll go first. 2 years ago, I was walking my dog at the park and a man approached me and asked to take a picture of her. And I said yes, because why not? It's a picture of a dog. So he starts taking a picture of my dog, and then I realized that he was like holding up her collar, and then it hit me. My address is on that collar. He's not taking a picture of my dog, he's taking a picture of my address. So I told him that I actually didn't feel comfortable with him having a picture of my dog, and I asked him to delete it. So he deletes it and then like starts walking away really fast. And I was like, excuse me, sir, no, could you also go into your deleted album and delete it from there? And he goes, I don't have a deleted album. And I was like, you have an iPhone, everybody has a deleted album, could you please delete the picture? And he was like, sorry, I don't have a deleted album, and like keeps walking away. And keep in mind, this is like 2 PM in a park, like there's other people around. So now I'm like chasing after him and I'm telling him, sir, I know you have the album, I will show you where the album is, can you please go onto your phone so that we can delete the picture? Oh, part two, I'm sorry for the delay. So I'm still chasing after him, and people at the park are like starting to look at us now because I'm chasing after him and I'm telling him to stop walking. And so he stops and I tell him again to delete the photo from the deleted album, and he goes, I don't have a deleted album. And I was like, yes you do, everybody does, it'll take 10 seconds. And he goes, fine. And he like goes on his phone, does something for a second, he goes, there, it's gone. And I was like, could I see the deleted album just to make sure it's gone? And he goes, no, you can't look at my phone. And I was like, I don't want to look at your phone, I just want to see the album just to make sure the picture is gone, that's it. And he goes, no, you're not going to look at my phone. And I was like, sir, I'm not going to stop and I'm not going to leave until you show me the album, so please just show me the album so we can be done with this. So he shows me the album, the picture was still there. So I made him delete it in front of my eyes. What if I hadn't noticed that he took a picture of my address? And what if I went home that day and, you know, that night when I took my dog out to pee, he was outside waiting for me? I mean...
This is why you should always keep pictures of your parents. A little girl named Olivia, who lived a very quiet life, decided to check her homework assignments that were posted online. The teacher posted that they needed to write down their favorite memory with their family as well as bring a photograph. Olivia then writes about how her and her mom play dolls every night in the basement before bed and that she has a lot of fun doing so. She finishes her paragraph and then looks in her dad's drawer for a photograph of mom. She only found pictures of her mom from high school but decided to use it anyway. Olivia goes to bed and wakes up the next morning. Once she arrives at school, the teacher then says, let's start presenting our project. Then the teacher called Olivia's name to present. Olivia then begins to read about how her and her mom play dolls every night and then pulls out the photograph. As soon as Olivia pulled out the photograph, her teacher's face goes numb. She then asks Olivia if she can take a closer look at the photograph. She then recognized her mom as one of her previous students. Then the teacher asks, "Where did you get this photo?" Olivia says, "My dad keeps them in his drawer." The teacher, shocked, sits down Olivia and pulls out an old newspaper. The newspaper headline, "Local high school teen murdered, boyfriend gone missing." The teacher then looks at Olivia and says, "Your mom has been dead for 14 years.
So when I was a sophomore in high school, I had this teacher who would only let the students in her class use the restroom one time per semester. Well, one day I raised my hand and I was like, "Excuse me," I don't remember her name, "can I please use the restroom?" And she was like, "No, you can't, because you've already used the restroom in my class this semester." Well, excuse me, you can't dictate my bladder. So I'm like all frustrated, and I started secretly texting my mom because I wasn't allowed to use my phone in class. And I was like, "Mom, I'm sitting in class right now, my teacher won't let me use the restroom." And she was like, "I'll take care of it for you." And I was like, "Okay." So like 5 minutes goes by, and all of a sudden my teacher's phone starts ringing, and she walks up to it and answers it, and she's like, "Hello?" "Yeah. Okay, thank you." And then she walks up to me like so angry, and she like slams the pass on my desk, and she was like, "Since you have to go that bad." And I was like, "Yeah, I really do, thanks." And I got up and left. I didn't even have to go to the bathroom. It was just the principle of it. I just roamed the halls.
Hey, I can't be the only one. Who else knows people that have killed other people?
Finally, something that I can actually relate to. So my grandma killed her mom, so she killed my great-grandma. It's kind of a crazy story, but back in the 90s, my grandma was over at her house giving her a bath. She was elderly, so my grandma was kind of in charge of taking care of her. During the bath, my grandma brought up the past about how she was abused as a child by one of her stepdads, and her mom then basically admitted to knowing about the abuse but blamed her for it instead of the stepdad, which sent my grandma into a rage. She ended up drowning my great-grandma, and then after she was dead, instead of calling the police, she cut up her body into 8 different pieces, put them in garbage cans, filled the cans with cement, and then put these garbage cans in different storage units all throughout my hometown where I grew up. When the police were investigating, she lied and said my great-grandma was in Hawaii with this wealthy man she met, and even faked letters from her. It's pretty crazy.